When the headlines first hit, they stunned everyone. Former DA band member sues Diddy for $60 million. Sara Rivers, once a rising voice on MTV's Making the Band 2, was now accusing one of hip-hop's most powerful moguls of sexual assault, harassment, exploitation, and even racketeering. And this wasn't some story of lingering bitterness or behind closed-door whispers. This was a full-scale legal attack, filed in open court, backed by years of silence that had suddenly turned into one of the most explosive allegations ever associated with Sean Diddy Combs. The details, disturbing. According to Rivers, what happened behind the scenes of Making the Band was anything but entertainment. She claimed that while cameras rolled and fans tuned in, she was being isolated, manipulated, and ultimately violated. The lawsuit stated that Diddy backed her into a corner and groped her without consent. But that wasn't all. She described the living conditions the cast was placed in as inhumane. Imagine cramped rooms, little privacy, barely any autonomy, all while pressure for fame and drama piled on day and night. But what set her case apart weren't just the accusations, they were the implications. Because this wasn't just about personal harm, it was about an entire system. She accused Diddy and his companies of orchestrating a setup, using the show not to build stars, but to use their labor, provoke conflict, and quietly sabotage budding careers from the inside out. In her own words, she wasn't just a contestant, she was a trap. The legal fallout, immediate. The lawsuit ricocheted across headlines and reignited questions the industry had buried for years. Was Making the Band built on exploitation? Did Diddy cross a line he thought fame would protect him from? But then, just as quickly as it erupted, the whole thing seemed to collapse. By summer of 2025, nearly every single one of Sarah's claims had been dismissed with prejudice, permanently thrown out in a move that looked like a legal death sentence. One claim remained standing, barely, but even that would require a special appeal just to stay alive. And now, months later, rumors are swirling that Sara Rivers may have missed a crucial deadline, the kind of technical mishap that can cost you everything in federal court. So the big questions are, why did this massive lawsuit unravel so fast? And what really happened between Sara Rivers and Diddy during the chaotic days of one of TV's most notorious shows? The answers aren't simple, and this story is just getting started. Long before courtrooms, headlines, or million-dollar lawsuits, Sara Rivers was a hungry artist with a dream like so many others to break through the noise and make her name ring in hip-hop. She was young, raw, and undeniably talented. Hailing from the East Coast, she brought that gritty lyrical energy and no-nonsense stage presence that producers look for. She could rap, she could sing. She wasn't just another pretty face in the crowd. She was fire in motion, chasing a shot at stardom without apology. Enter Making the Band 2. It was early 2000s pop culture chaos. MTV was running the music world, and Diddy, he was everywhere, a hitmaker, mogul, gatekeeper to the industry's most exclusive inner circle. When Making the Band 2 launched, it promised something different. Not just a talent show but a boot camp, a proving ground. It wasn't about overnight fame, it was about transformation, hustle, and survival of the fittest. Sara got cast, and instantly she became more than just a contestant. She became a character millions of people watched every week. Her voice, her style, her conflicts, they all became part of the narrative the producers shaped on screen. For many fans, she was the one with potential, confident but not cocky, strong but still vulnerable. But behind the scenes, the story was much more complicated. Outside the tight edits and camera angles, Sara wasn't just dealing with competitors. She was dealing with an environment that slowly broke people down. Long days, no privacy, constant surveillance. The production wasn't just documenting emotions, it was manufacturing them. Her physical health started to suffer. She lost weight. She lost sleep. But worse, she says she started losing control over her own career and body. According to her later testimony, even simple disagreements or hesitation were punished. Decisions about what to wear, where to sleep, what to say on camera were no longer entirely her own. She began to feel more like a prop, something producers and executives could move around, use up, and discard when the time was right. Friends and insiders from that era have since hinted that the atmosphere on set was closer to a psychological experiment than an artist development program. And Sara says the cracks started to show early, way before the groping incident she would later call out in court. From the outside, it looked like she was about to blow up, but from the inside, it was already starting to fall apart. And yet, few people knew what was actually going on, because once the lights came on and the cameras rolled, her real struggles never made the final cut. but the real turning point that would come later. And when it did, it would shatter everything we thought we knew about the show and about Diddy's empire. By the time Sara Rivers filed her $60 million lawsuit in early 2025, her story was no longer just another reality TV footnote. It had transformed into a bombshell legal case laced with disturbing accusations. According to her, what happened during making The Band 2 wasn't just television, it was trauma, masked as entertainment. In the lawsuit, she accused Sean Diddy Combs of backing her into a corner and groping her, forcibly touching her in a non-consensual and humiliating encounter. It wasn't framed as a one-time incident either, but rather as a reflection of the power, imbalance and exploitation that allegedly saturated every corner of the reality show's production. And for Sara, that abuse didn't begin and end with a single moment. She alleged that the entire set was designed to isolate and control, not shape artists, but break them down. Not with open threats, but through a slow, calculated erosion of boundaries, and freedom. Surveillance was constant, with cameras filming late into the night, even in the most private moments. Living spaces were overcrowded and poorly maintained. Contestants had limited food, no stable routine, and zero personal privacy. There were no counselors, no wellness check-ins, just pressure. Always pressure, to perform, to fight, to reveal their rawest selves on camera, no matter the cost to their mental health. But Sara's most chilling claim was this: the exploitation wasn't unintentional, it was deliberate. She accused not just Diddy, but his affiliated companies, including Bad Boy Entertainment and MTV's production team, of operating the show as a form of labor abuse. According to her, producers used cast members as unpaid workers, forcing them to rehearse, perform, and promote the show, while receiving none of the support or compensation owed to actual employees. Worse, she says her talent was used against her. Episodes were selectively edited to portray her as difficult, killing her chances of landing deals after the show. What should have been a career breakthrough became, in her words, career sabotage. The very platform that promised to launch her instead buried her in public perception. Sara even pointed to specific moments from the broadcast as evidence, scenes where she appeared isolated, emotional, or combative, with no context for what had happened off camera. She said those clips were strategically used not to tell the truth, but to discredit her before she could ever speak it. This wasn't just about one man's actions, it was, in her eyes, about a multi-level system of control where fame was dangled like a carrot, and silence was the price of survival. And with the Adult Survivors Act opening a limited window for older cases of abuse to reach court, she seized her chance. But as her lawsuit began gaining traction in the media, so did the legal roadblocks. And what happened next blew the whole case off the rails. When Making the Band first aired in the early 2000s, it was marketed as peak reality television. The raw, unfiltered journey of rising artists battling for a shot at fame under the watchful eye of Sean Diddy Combs. But as the years passed and the glitter faded, a darker truth started to emerge. Was it really a reality show, or was it something far more toxic than anyone realized at the time? Behind the scenes, Making the Band didn't just follow lives, it shaped and strained them. Contestants were reportedly crammed into small, uncomfortable apartments in New York City where privacy didn't exist. Multiple cast members have described grueling 16-hour filming days, sleep deprivation, and a constant feeling of being on edge. The challenge of stardom wasn't just a narrative for viewers. It was a psychological pressure cooker disguised as content. And that pressure, it was often manufactured. Producers allegedly fueled conflict, poked at rivalries, and stirred drama to boost ratings. Contestants would be deprived of food or forced to deal with unmanageable schedules until the tension boiled over on camera. Viewers remember the fights, some became iconic. But what they didn't see was how those explosions were often set up, strategically, and repeatedly. Take the now infamous clip where Diddy made the group walk from Manhattan to Brooklyn just to get cheesecake. Funny to fans, maybe. But former cast members say that scene sums up something much darker. Control, humiliation, and performative obedience wrapped in the illusion of mentorship. And Sara Rivers, she wasn't alone in feeling manipulated or mistreated. Past interviews with other DA band members, including Chopper, Babs, and Freddie P., have hinted at similar experiences. Freddie P. once said in a candid live that the show messed up his head and that he struggled deeply after it ended. Babs Bunny revealed in later interviews that the environment was emotionally draining, with little support for the personal toll it took. Even supporters of the show can't deny that Making the Band pushed boundaries. That wouldn't fly today. Forced confrontations, exploitative edits, public shaming, it wasn't just intense, it was weaponized. And the artists, they weren't just fighting for their dreams. Many were also fighting to hold on to their sanity. So when Sara Rivers claimed in her lawsuit that the show's producers sabotaged her and capitalized on her vulnerability, it didn't sound that fetch, not when you line it up with years of unspoken resentment from castmates who were chewed up and spit out by a system built for spectacle, not support. The question becomes unavoidable: was this just the Wild West of early 2000s reality TV, or a carefully masked machine of control and exploitation? And truthfully, a lot of people are starting to revisit those episodes with new eyes, wondering how much of what we saw was reality, and how much was abuse the world laughed through. But as ugly as that sounds, things were just beginning to spiral for Sara, and when she put her allegations on paper, the law had its own response. And it wasn't what anyone expected. By the time Sara Rivers finally stepped into a courtroom, virtually and legally speaking, over 2 decades had passed since her time on Making the Band 2. But on February 2025, everything came roaring back to life. Rivers filed a bombshell lawsuit in New York federal court under the Adult Survivors Act, a temporary law that created a 1-year window allowing adults to bring forward claims of sexual assault that had previously expired under the statute of limitations. It was a rare chance to seek justice, and Sara wasted no time. But she didn't stop at just filing a typical assault case. She went wide. Her lawsuit named Diddy, Bad Boy Records, and several production entities affiliated with Making the Band. The charges: sexual assault, harassment, intentional infliction of emotional distress, civil conspiracy, and racketeering. She even cited the Gender-Motivated Violence Protection Act, a law few even knew existed, allowing victims of gender-based violence the right to seek civil damages. It was daring, unexpected, and absolutely headline-worthy. The 73-page filing outlined a years-long trauma, allegedly stemming from her time on the show, with shocking details about isolation, control, and unwanted sexual contact. Her legal team didn't hold back. They asked for $60 million in damages, citing the destruction of her career, mental health, and public image. But it wasn't long before the backlash hit. Diddy's legal team came out swinging. In a public statement, they denied all allegations outright and called the lawsuit baseless, opportunistic, and a clear money grab. Behind the scenes, his team reportedly began filing motion after motion, attacking the lawsuit on every front, from jurisdiction to the statute of limitations, to the vagueness of her claims. And just a few months later, in August 2025, Judge Jed S. Rakoff delivered the blow that turned the whole situation on its head. He dismissed nearly all of Sara Rivers' lawsuit with prejudice. That term, with prejudice, is legal, but the impact is real. It means those claims are gone for good. She can't refile them. It's a legal dead end. So, what survived? Just one count, the claim under the Gender-Motivated Violence Protection Act, but even that came with complications. Judge Rakoff kept it alive only on the condition that a higher court approves it. The issue: legal experts debate whether New York SGMVPA even applies to these kinds of past incidents under the Adult Survivors Act. It's a gray area, legally untested. Essentially, Sara's last remaining claim was barely on life support and still facing major surgery just to survive. Worse still, the appeal process would require tight deadlines, accurate filings, and quick action. Any slip-up could end it permanently, and unfortunately for Sara, that's exactly what came next. After months of build-up, media buzz, and buried secrets finally clawing their way into the spotlight, Sara Rivers' lawsuit came crashing down with shocking speed. But why? How could a case with that many allegations, involving one of the most powerful men in hip-hop, be almost entirely dismissed within 6 months? The answer lies in the courtroom, and in the fine print of how civil law operates. In August 2025, Judge Jed S. Rakoff dismissed virtually all of Rivers' claims with prejudice. That detail matters more than it sounds. When a case is thrown out with prejudice, it means the court has decided the claims are not only insufficient but permanently barred. Sara can't refile them, can't revise, can't relaunch. It's legal closure, whether the story feels finished or not. So where did her lawsuit fail? Legal analysts point to a few critical weaknesses, the kind that judges are trained to spot immediately. First, timing. While New York's Adult Survivors Act reopened the door for old claims, it didn't guarantee automatic approval. Cases still had to prove that incidents occurred, that they caused measurable damage, and that the defendants could reasonably respond to decades-old evidence. Memories fade, witnesses disappear, defense teams argue that fairness gets compromised. Next came the issue of specificity. Court documents suggest that some of Sara's claims may have lacked concrete details. Exact dates, names of witnesses, supporting evidence. That doesn't mean the events didn't happen, but in court, you have to prove it. And emotional weight doesn't always translate to legal weight. On top of that, Diddy's legal team didn't waste time exploiting every loophole available. They challenged jurisdiction. They questioned whether the Adult Survivors Act applied in her case. They argued that too many of the claims were vague or overlapped with statutes that had expired years ago. And the last piece, the legal world itself. Some legal scholars suggest Sara Rivers' team aimed too high, too fast by stacking so many charges, including racketeering and emotional abuse. They may have overwhelmed the case's foundation. Others believe the system itself is broken, a place where victims are encouraged to come forward, but not supported once they do, especially if the accused is powerful, wealthy, and legally shielded from accountability by decades of influence. So the question remains, was this case poorly built, or impossible to win from the start? Sara's supporters believe the court should have given her more time, more grace, and a deeper look into the reality TV machine that arguably changed her life forever. Legal minds, on the other hand, say this was a textbook dismissal under federal standards. No hard evidence, no refile, no second chance. But what nobody can deny is this. One of the most scandalous lawsuits against Diddy was nearly erased before the public ever got to fully process it. And the only part left standing, the gender violence claim, that's still hanging in limbo, but it wouldn't hang for long, because Sara Rivers was about to miss her most important deadline yet. Just when it looked like Sara Rivers' $60 million lawsuit had one last lifeline left, it slipped right through her fingers. Not because of a ruling, not because of new evidence, but because of a missed form. According to federal court records, Sara was supposed to file Form C by October 17th and didn't. Now, to the average person, that might sound like a minor paperwork issue, but in the world of federal appeals, it's anything but minor. It's deadly. Here's why. Form C is the designation of record. It asks what officially tells the appeals court what happened in the trial court below, who the players are, and what legal errors the appellant in this case, Sara, is asking to be reviewed. Without it, the appellate judges don't even know what case they're supposed to look at. No form equals no appeal, and the deadline's strict. In most federal circuits, missing this without permission or a valid extension request can trigger a case default, meaning the case is considered abandoned. In the court's eyes, if you miss that form, you've essentially walked away from your right to escalate. That's exactly what seems to have happened here. Reports, including an exclusive from All Hip Hop, revealed that Rivers failed to submit the form on time, and the window quietly closed. She initially filed her appeal back on September 15th, but when the most critical follow-up deadline came around just 1 month later, nothing was filed. No explanation, no request for extension, no backup motion, just silence. And legally speaking, silence is surrender. Now, insiders are wondering, what really happened? Did Sara's legal team simply miss the deadline, a clerical error with irreversible consequences? Was it a case of limited resources, stalled communication, or deeper mismanagement from behind the scenes? Or was it something else? Some speculate she may have been pressured to back down, overwhelmed by mounting legal costs, or scared off by Diddy's high-powered legal machina team that made entire lawsuits vanish in under 90 days. Whatever the reason, the reality is this: that missed October 17th deadline may have officially ended her last legal shot. With the appeal likely defaulted, the gender-motivated violence claim, Sara's only surviving count, could be tossed next. No trial, no hearing, no more chances. It's a brutal end to a case that began with so much public heat, only to quietly die in the shadows of federal court procedure. But even as Rivers' case teeters on collapse, Diddy isn't exactly sitting back in celebration, because in the background, his own legal problems have only gotten worse, and some of them are catching fire fast. Sara Rivers' lawsuit may be fading into the legal abyss, but for Sean Diddy Combs, the nightmare is far from over, because while one accuser's claims slipped through the cracks, more lawsuits, allegations, and investigations have crept in, each one pulling back another layer of what some now call the bad boy empire's dark underbelly. First off, there's the Courtney Burgess case and other explosive accusation that's still in motion. In that situation, Diddy didn't just deny guilt, he fired back with a defamation lawsuit of his own, despite already being incarcerated. And get this, a judge recently granted Diddy the power to serve Burgess through newspaper publication. A rare move that only happens when a defendant is physically unable to serve legal papers due to detention or isolation. Yep, who heard that right? Diddy's no longer just facing court hearings, he's behind bars. And while details about his incarceration remained closely guarded, multiple reports suggest he's facing concerning prison conditions. We're talking limited communication, access, psychological evaluations, and strict monitoring, all while the spotlight on him only burns brighter outside. Meanwhile, more civil lawsuits continue to pile up, some dating back years, others freshly filed through New York's Adult Survivors Act before the deadline closed, and all of them paint the same haunting picture, a pattern of alleged abuse, manipulation, and betrayal stretching decades. For years, Diddy was considered untouchable, the ultimate mogul, running record labels, clothing lines, liquor brands, Ciroc deals, and still showing up with elite celebrity circles like royalty. But now, public perception is shifting fast. Search his name on social media or Google, and the headlines are no longer red carpets or new music ventures. They're lawsuits, allegations, and questions about what really happened behind the money, the mogul status, and the empire he built. Brands have gone quiet. Collaborators are backing off. Even longtime industry allies, people who once called him a genius, have gone radio silent. So here's the bigger question. Is this a fall from grace, or a reckoning decades in the making? Because while some of Diddy's accusers may have lost in court, the court of public opinion is just now forming its verdict. And with every new claim, every headline, every leak, the foundation shakes a little more. But if what happened to Sara Rivers is any example, what happens in the courtroom doesn't always match what plays out in real life. And this brings us to the bigger, more dangerous idea that no one wants to say out loud. What if the system wasn't built to hold people like Diddy accountable at all? Whether Sara Rivers' lawsuit survives in court or not, its impact goes far beyond any single verdict. Because her story, one of exploitation, silence, and the fight to be heard, feels alarmingly familiar. In fact, it feels like a blueprint for how the music industry has often treated young, hungry talent, willing to give everything for a shot at success, only to be discarded, discredited, or destroyed when they speak out. Sara's claims, they're not isolated. They echo deep, painful truths that have circled the music business and Hollywood for years. Things left unspoken out of fear. Fear of blacklisting, fear of lawsuits, fear of being seen as divisive or disloyal. Because when your career lives or dies based on powerful executives, what happens when the person who hurt you also owns the studio, the brand, and the stage? Sara's allegations were about more than just personal trauma. She alleged a culture of manipulation, a system that rewarded silence and punished resistance, all while churning out reality TV moments and chart-topping singles. She's not alone. Just look at others who came forward years, sometimes decades later, like Cassie, who also alleged abuse at the hands of Diddy before reaching a confidential settlement in 2023, or artists like Freddie P., another Making the Band contestant, who once admitted in a tearful live video that he considered taking his own life after the show, saying it broke him emotionally. Even hip-hop vets have dropped cryptic warnings over the years about the industry's darker corridors, places where success often comes with strings no contract openly mentions, undias, ironclad management deals, backroom threats. These aren't rare, they're practically standard practice in some corners of the industry, and they make coming forward not only terrifying, but legally paralyzing. That's why lawsuits like Sara's, even if dismissed, still matter. They trigger a conversation that's been buried for too long. Does our system truly protect victims, or protect power? Because in the courtroom, the odds are rarely balanced. When billionaires have private legal armies, and victims are relying on GoFundMe pages, justice stops looking like a scale, and more like a wall. Sara's attempt to scale that wall may have fallen short. But for every young artist watching, her bravery to even try might mean they were no longer alone in what they've endured. And the more these stories come out, the more it becomes clear. This isn't just about Diddy, it's about an entire culture built to survive scandal but not accountability. Right now, Sara Rivers' $60 million lawsuit is hanging by a thread, or possibly already gone. With her missing the appellate deadline and most of her claims dismissed with prejudice, the courts have likely spoken, unless there's a procedural miracle or an injury claim revived by higher judicial review. But legally over doesn't mean publicly forgotten. If the justice system won't hear her story in full, there's still one place that will: the world. She hasn't done a full sit-down interview. She hasn't gone live. And there's still no memoir on shelves. But if she chose to go public with everything outside the courtroom, no gag orders, number redactions, no legal filter, it could shake the narrative all over again. A raw podcast appearance, a tello book, a mini-doc, even a series of emotional social media clips. In today's era, the court of public opinion can do what judges want. It can amplify silence into accountability. And it's worth remembering, Diddy's name is still front and center in multiple legal crossfires, ranging from other civil lawsuits to his ongoing incarceration. He's far from cleared. In fact, he may be more vulnerable now than he's ever been. Because if there's one thing consistent about cases like these, when one person speaks publicly, others often follow. And even if Sara's lawsuit fades from search results, her voice could become the match that lights newer stories from people who have stayed quiet for years. Whether or not the world ever gets to see the full truth behind making the band, to one thing is certain. Something about that show didn't sit right with a lot of its cast, and time is finally allowing them to say it out loud. So where do we go from here? That depends on how many others are still silently carrying scars, on whether the industry keeps protecting power, or starts protecting people, and on what Sara chooses to do next. Because this doesn't feel like the end, just an intermission in something much, much bigger. And we have to ask, what really happened behind the scenes of making the band? And is Sara Rivers the only one still living with a story the world has never heard?